Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Next speaker is Mike Tolfsen, who's the education person in OneNote. He was a member of the OneNote team back at the very beginning, and has just been passionately interested in education. He was the one that first saw the potential for OneNote in education on the OneNote team. So it's great to have him back on the OneNote team working on education.
Thanks, Jonathan. And it's great following Chris Prattley, because I've worked with Chris for, gosh, over 11 years on and off. And so recently we actually got to meet all the innovative educators who were also at a conference at the same time. And Chris came to that event, and so introducing a lot of these teachers to the guy who basically invented OneNote, and then he invented Sway. It's like the teachers were falling down in droves, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm meeting Mr. OneNote and Sway. So it was great to have Chris there. And by the way, if you notice I'm wearing a cape, I know WIPD is a little more serious crowd compared to maybe the E2 crowd, but we're going to lighten it up a little bit. So my name's Mike, and like Jonathan said, I'm on the OneNote team. I've been working in the education space for many years on and off. I was on the team for 6 years, from 2004 till 2010, and then I left for about 4.5 years. I worked on Office 365, and then I moved back more recently to work on education again. And I'll do probably a combination of things here today in terms of, let me make sure my slide goes. I'll do some, there we go. I'll do some talking, and then I'll do some demoing. I think, I'm assuming everyone here knows what OneNote is, I'm going to assume. Raise hand if you don't know what the heck OneNote is, because I'm not going to wait for you. Sorry. Anyways, a lot of people don't know that OneNote was recently pulled out of the Office organization. This is an internal thing. Pulled out of Office and moved into its own org. And Satya Nadella has been putting a special focus on OneNote. He is thinking of it as a special gem, you might say, that is less discovered than we would like it to be. And we have our whole organization in a general manager and business unit now. In addition, we have a whole group of engineers and program managers just focusing on education. And that's a new thing. So back in the day, so to speak, when I was on OneNote and I was doing a bunch of education things on the side, there was one person working on education in his weekends and nights, and that would be this person. And now there's a large group of engineers, a bunch of them in Vancouver, Canada. I see Alex there, somewhere in Redmond. But we've probably got about 20-ish engineers and PMs just focusing on education and features and scenarios and products. So that's a good thing. And Satya has put a specific focus on the education space. And so you'll start to see a whole wave more of focus just in the education space. And just in general, when we talk about OneNote in education, we start with the core pillars: just saving time, more organized, and collaborating better. And I know, who here saw Rob Baker's talk? So Rob Baker's talk is fantastic, and I think that when you get into the more advanced scenarios, I call that unicorns and rainbows, and that's a great place. But a lot of teachers and students and education folks, you can't start them out with unicorns and rainbows, because they've been told about unicorns and rainbows for a real long time, and most of them won't believe you if you start there. So we just start out with, hey, it's going to save you time, help you get organized, and collaborate better. But then we'll move on to unicorns and rainbows later on, and they may or may not believe you, but a lot of times it does happen. The other thing we're seeing right now is this explosion of innovation with OneNote in the education space. And I think a lot of that is due to the Class Notebook app and the Staff Notebook app, but a lot of it's due to we have multi-platform support now on OneNote. We have inking on the iPad. We have inking on obviously tablets. Surfaces are getting out there, but we're seeing this explosion of innovation happening, and we have things where we have lesson plans being delivered in OneNote, all types of really interesting content. We have, this is in the lower right, some folks in Scotland. We have educators who are hacking curriculum, national curriculum, into OneNote. And the reason they're doing that is in Scotland, there's a lot of little small islands where there's no internet access at all. So you go to school where there's Wi-Fi, you get your content delivered in OneNote, and now you can take it on any device. You know, I like to tell people now, Microsoft celebrates diversity. I've got an iPhone, can you believe it? And we love iPads too. And so if you have an Android or iPad or a Mac or a browser, but you can take all that offline in OneNote. And so when your curriculum's in OneNote, the kids can go home when there's no internet and do homework. Or Title I schools too, if lots of places in the United States kids don't have internet at home. Or another scenario is student athletes who ride the bus a lot. Turns out when you're on the bus for 2 hours, you can't do homework if your device can't go offline, or with paper, it's, you're lugging around all these things. And then in France, we've got a great case study that's actually getting pretty broad. Or Dyslexie has been doing research kids with dyslexia. And they've rolled this out to 2,000 kids, and I believe they're considering getting an even larger grant in France. But the research has shown that when using just OneNote on a tablet, so no other software other than OneNote, a hand scanner for scanning in pages, and a tablet, kids with dyslexia can keep up 2 to 3 times faster than they can without. Because a lot of times just keeping everything in one place in that organizational model, if everything's exploded all over like it is in a modern classroom, this kid is not a college kid here, if you can see. Especially when you're that age and you have dyslexia, organization can be a challenge. And so the fact that it's all in one place, France is considering rolling this out to 200,000 dyslexic kids, this program. And so we're just seeing a lot of really interesting things happening in the education space. Now the other thing, and who here has heard of the OneNote class notebook? Oh, great. Well, a lot of folks. That's good. So this, and if you saw Rob Baker's talk, he does a great job talking about, originally the way we got Jonathan Gruden here, Mr. Gruden, and for those of you who don't know, I've worked in OneNote education a long time. We did lots of things over the years. We saw lots of things that were happening. And Jonathan started talking to a bunch of different schools about maybe a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago.
2 years
and,
ago, Whipty.
Yeah, Whipty, that's right. I know he talked to Rob Baker, obviously. I think talked to Appleby and Whitfield, and St. Thomas came to some of those, and there was a lot of interesting things happening, and lots of different flavors of ways people are experimenting with OneNote to make it more efficient. And so Jonathan came back and actually talked to Chris Prattley, and he talked to me, because I wasn't even on the OneNote team at the time. I had left, but I had this whole, I like to say I was addicted to the space, and so here comes Jonathan with a little bit of drugs, and I fell off the wagon, and I got back into it again. But Jonathan and myself started working with a whole bunch of schools, and we proposed the concept of this class notebook app that takes a whole bunch of stuff from a bunch of different schools, and we added some more things to it, and ultimately, the idea is this class notebook helps a teacher set up this whole OneNote structure in one notebook. And it has 3 parts. It has the collaboration space, where everybody can read, write, project-based learning, co-authoring, all those good things about OneNote. Has the content library, that's read-only for the students, but the teacher can put things into it, so the teacher can put in a syllabus or lesson plans or lecture notes or curriculum, and the kids grab a copy of it, and they can move it to their private student notebook. And that's the part where the teacher and the student have a private space in which they can collaborate together, and real-time feedback can happen and both ways. And students can do their work there, or they could do things in the project-based learning collaboration space. And that's where we're seeing a bunch of really cool things happening. And related to that, about 2 months ago, we put out a staff notebook. Who here knows what the staff notebook is for education? Maybe not as many people. So it's a very similar concept, but it's designed for education staff and staff leaders and staff members. So you could have a principal collaborating with teachers. You might have a curriculum PLC. But you can do similar things where you have staff meeting notes, staff initiatives, policies and procedures. Maybe you have, in the read-only part, you might have policies and procedures, dates and deadlines. And in the private staff member notebooks, you can have things like professional development, or if you're a principal, classroom observations. And I'll show some of these things in just a moment. You might have things like lesson plan feedback. And that whole structure can help an entire school then digitize. And you have staff notebooks that staff leaders use with principals and vice principals or faculty members in college, and they can collaborate together. And then the class notebooks are where the teacher and students and educators collaborate, and you can actually start moving all this content digitally, organized, and collaborative, all in one place. And so that's where we're seeing there's sort of OneNote schools out there that have completely gone digital. They've completely, or mostly, gotten rid of paper. And everyone collaborates more effectively, better feedback. Everything is on any device. Staff in my pocket, as I like to say. I can have my whole staff right on my phone. And so that's the thing that we're seeing a bunch of great stuff around. And so at this point, I think I'm just going to jump in, or actually maybe I'll just show. I love there's some great quotes here. If we've got, a window into their brains is what people are calling it with class notebooks. Shifting the way I'm teaching. Student engagement and accountability is improved. Synchronous feedback dramatically shortens the learning cycle. So a lot of really, really interesting things are happening in the classroom and staff as well with this. And we're seeing it in staff notebooks where principals are saying teachers are actually able to hit the statewide standards more effectively at a higher level due to some of the things that are happening with class and staff notebooks. So with that, I think I'll just jump into OneNote real quick. I'm curious, who has seen have you seen a class notebook or staff notebook app itself? Have you actually done that? Oh, okay, a lot of people haven't. That's good. So I'll pull up the class notebook first, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. For the staff notebook, this is a secret. It's basically the same thing with some different icons and text, but don't tell anybody. But I'll launch the class notebook, and it's an Office 365 app. It's free. And the way it works is it's designed to let a teacher set up this class notebook, or if it's a school leader, staff leader, set up a staff notebook just in about a minute. So I say, create a class notebook. So here I might do math, period, 21, sure. I probably don't have a 21 in there. This just tells you the same things I told you. You get a collaboration space, you get a content library, and then a private student notebook for every kid in the class. I can give a co-teacher. So if I have a co-teacher or a team teacher, paraeducators, we've heard great stories with paraeducators becoming co-owners of the notebook to help out the struggling kids in class. Then it asks me my student names. And now, right now, we're a little more low-tech. You can imagine in the future, at an undetermined date, we'll get smarter than this. And we'll support distribution groups. We'd like to hopefully tie into different SISs in the future and other places where we don't get into classroom management. Sure, question.
I just have to say I absolutely adore and love the fact that you can put in email addresses there that we exported from my SIS. Makes it seamless and easy.
Yeah, no, that's great. We're going to make it easier for sure, promise. And then the last step, this is the part that's nice, right? This is not too hard for an educator or a teacher, right? It's only a few steps. Then just what do you want to put inside of each student's private space? And we give a few suggestions, and I can turn off quizzes, and maybe I want to add labs, or maybe I want to add other things, but it's very easily customizable. And I hit next, and I'm pretty much done. This just gives me a preview. So I'm a teacher. I get to say all my students. I'm the hub. I get to see everybody. I can interact with every single student. The student view is just, I only get to see my own stuff. So I switch to the student view. I only get to see my own stuff. I can't see all my other peers, obviously. But I still get to use the collaboration space in the content library. And then I hit create, and it goes out and it creates this whole structure. This is the thing that I know that places like Country Day, Applebee, Whitfield, all these places, no more hard wiring all this stuff together. We sort of make it all happen very quickly. And yeah. And then the email goes out to everybody. Hey, you just got invited to a class notebook. Click this link, student, and open it up. We also insert the link automatically in the shared with me for Office 365, so you never lose your link. So students don't need, if you lose the email, don't worry, it's right there. And then you just click the link here to open it up. And I'll just show you a pre-populated class notebook here. Math 201 is one example. And so my collaboration space, I might have group project work, project-based learning. So group 1 is doing this stuff, and I got all types of beautiful things in there. Group 2 is doing some sort of mind map. Maybe there's discussions happening. The content library is places where I put things like, problem of the week. So the students can go grab a copy of this problem of the week and drag it into their private student notebooks. Lectures, handouts. So I got a tweet today from a teacher who just started using class notebooks about a month ago. And he said, hey, kids were sick for a week, and this other kid went on a trip to Korea, and they came back, and they were totally cut up. All the content was in the content library. They grabbed copies. They did their work. So it actually helps efficiency where previously they couldn't do these things. And maybe I've got all my curriculum here, 7th grade English lesson plans. Maybe this was co-developed in a staff notebook, all this curriculum in English. And we have this happening in local middle schools. They co-develop the curriculum in English in the staff notebook. Then they move it to the class notebook. And the teachers can grab it, and they can tweak it a little bit. But everything's been digitized. They're saying at Sammamish High School locally, they've gone about 85, maybe 90% paperless. And they only started using class and staff notebooks in the beginning of this year. And so it's very much changing. They're saying our copy room is like a ghost town. Nobody goes there anymore. You don't wait in line for copies anymore. And again, the best part is probably the private student notebooks. So then I can browse around and look at student 1 or student 2. I can actually see what's happening almost in real time. This is that window into the brains. Here's my real-time feedback that I've maybe given. And maybe there's a kid who asked a question, and they're confused. And maybe they mark a little tag here with I am confused. And so as a teacher, I can hit find tags, right? And I can say, oh, who are all the confused kids in my class right now? And I can very quickly then go and scroll down and find all the questions. I think I scroll with my fingers, probably easier. Where my questions go. There we go. So there's my questions. Maybe one kid marked they need help, and maybe they inked it. And there's another kid who said, oh, I'm confused. And I can very quickly just skip around and actually see what's going on. So imagine if you were a teacher and you saw 8 people. So you say, okay, everybody got that, right? Who has a question? Jonathan, I bet you have a question. And he's like, no, I'm good. No one raises their hands. And then I go back, and 5 minutes later, I see this. I guess maybe either the introverts weren't extroverting, or maybe I did a crappy job of teaching the lesson. Like, obviously, things are different than I thought they were. And so, yeah, I can address that in real time and start to really improve the way that learning can happen. So that's a whirlwind tour of class notebooks. Again, with staff notebooks, it's a similar concept. I won't go through the whole app. The app looks very similar. We give you some default starting content that's different. Like, we give you a default staff meeting notes section. We have things like initiatives where you could do fundraisers or Spirit Week if you're staff. Maybe you've got your curriculum being developed. Michael Smith, maybe this might look familiar to you. Got some good beautiful Poly Cantu content for Forest Ridge. But the staff notebook is similar. But again, professional development. Imagine if you're a teacher. We hear this from principals. A lot of them don't like to type. So if I want to do classroom observations in the modern world, if I'm a principal, and I'm going to give that private staff member feedback, I've got my phone. I go into the class. I just take a picture. Goes into their staff notebook because I got it in my pocket. And then with my iPad, maybe, because it's not just PC ink, with my iPad, I'm sitting in bed. I'm writing my feedback. I maybe do audio recording and make formal observations and embed the audio. All this self-assessment, communication, critical thinking, all this can be digitized. Lesson plan feedback can be digitized. It can be private just to that teacher from the principal or vice principal or the faculty head or the department leaders. Parent communication, evaluation. You can do lots of things here. You can, this isn't the only way. We give a bunch of suggestions. But this is the type of thing that we're seeing right now. And we think that this is a very powerful model to help schools be more efficient and to collaborate better at the end of the day. OneNote can sort of become that organization and collaboration platform for a school. And the pretty picture, the infographic, because people in education a lot of times like infographics. This is how we see it, right? We have staff leaders collaborating with staff members and teachers at the top to the middle here, and then organically or not, teachers and students collaborating with class notebooks. And OneNote can become an organization and collaboration platform for a whole school or whole education place. So that's where we're at tonight, right now. But now we're going to talk about flying cars in the future. Obviously, no one here is under NDA, so I'm going to be painting broad strokes. Not committing to anything, I guess is what I'm saying. So, so one thing is, we're going to keep making class and staff notebooks better. That's one thing. Hopefully that's obvious. We're not done with them. There's a lot of improvements we can do there. Like you can imagine that some people want to automate the process of pushing out content and not having it always the student get it. That's something I could imagine somebody might want. You can imagine lots of improvements in the way that students and teachers are automated into the process of who gets added and who gets removed. You can imagine lots of different scenarios. I won't talk about all of them, but we're listening to everybody's feedback. And if you haven't ever sent mail to onenote.edu@microsoft.com, it's a great place to send us feedback. Also, onenote.uservoice.com is a great place to vote up and vote down and put suggestions in. But that's definitely, we're listening to the feedback, and we're highly responsive. The best part for me as a former, the only education guy and OneNote person is that the answer used to be, that's an awesome idea. I love it, but we'll get to it in 10 years. And so now with the whole team of engineers, that's an awesome idea, and I think we might do it in 2 months maybe. So it's a very different world that we live in now. And the other thing is we just announced Office 365 APIs, including OneNote APIs, and that means Office 365 OneNote APIs. So one can imagine, and this is not an imagination, it's real now, LMSs want to pull stuff in and out of OneNote. And one can imagine there's lots of scenarios in which OneNote can start interacting in lots of interesting ways and doing things with workflow or with pages or with sections, and longer term interacting with the page content. There's a lot of interesting scenarios once you start having APIs. And so this is something you'll start hearing and seeing a lot more of, and we're going to start working with small, medium, and large education companies is the hope, and there's a lot of interest, obviously, because class and staff notebooks has started generating a lot of interest in the education community. The ISVs and partners are starting to hear from all these teachers like, hey, I started using this class notebook thing, it's pretty cool. Hey, we're using staff notebooks and it's pretty cool. How can it work with your LMS or your thing? And so they're hearing from folks about that, which is good. In the Ink world, we started with Ink on the PC. We've got Ink on the Mac. We have Ink on Android. We have Ink in the new Edge browser. If you haven't heard of Edge, it's the new browser that we just announced yesterday. Same E, which is good, but way less words and less clunky to say and hell of a lot better. So you'll be able to ink in the browser. So Ink is becoming much more of a first-class citizen for Microsoft across the board, I would say. And OneNote's, we've always cared, but now the rest of the company cares about a lot more too, I think, because we believe Ink is a critical differentiator. I mean, you saw a lot of the pages from OneNote. I mean, try doing real STEM on a keyboard. It just doesn't work. And Rob Baker, I think, made his point really well. There's just a bunch of stuff you can't do in STEM or otherwise. Just almost any subject you can't do very well with just a keyboard. You can try to cram it in and make it, but just it's not natural intuitive. It's not superhuman. It's very robot. And so robots can only handle so many things well, and you lose a lot when you lose Ink. Another one we're really looking at is content conversion and distribution. Got our good friend Alex here. We're working on some fun things with him. Hopefully you'll see soon. Here's an example. Who here knew that Greece moved their entire national curriculum into OneNote? Oh, they did that. Who here knew that Finland moved their whole national curriculum into OneNote? Yeah. And Scotland's working on it, and it's not just these guys. There's a bunch of teachers out there who are building their own curriculum. Wouldn't it be great if we can help them get that out to the world in an easier way? I can imagine a lot of scenarios that OneNote makes the perfect digital binder in my pocket, on any device, and any platform, and I can annotate it, I can do all these things, I can share it. And so that's just a great scenario. It saves time, better organized, annotation, digital, better for the environment. There's lots of good reasons. So that's one we're going to be looking at. And what's nice is we have a universal distribution mechanism, and it's a free one. OneNote's free. Any platform, any device, and it's free. And it's interesting. We talk to a lot of companies and a lot of educators and a lot of places that they still don't even know OneNote exists, which is sad. We're going to change that. But I talk to a lot of these folks, and I show them, there's every platform, every device, all these you show them these scenarios, and I think the technical term is their head explodes. They have no idea. It's like, oh, yeah, this is all possible. It's been around for many years, and now it's yours. Another one is kind of related, but community. We want to build a much greater community around OneNote, around content. We want to let teachers, educators, anybody really, but we think education is a huge place, and not just teachers, students. What's the term? UCG, or UGC, user-generated content. We want to create communities of content that make it really easy for people to share notebooks, look at other notebooks, have communities of different places, host them different places. And so you should think and see more about community around notebooks in the future. And then, almost done here, who's here has ever heard of or seen OneNoteInEducation.com? Oh, you're so sad. So sad. Write down this link. Take a picture, tweet it, put it on wherever you want to do, whatever your mechanism is, put it in OneNote.
Is this what used to be OneNoteForTeachers.com?
Yes, it is. So it got upgraded because we added more personas. We added There's students, there's a student section, a teacher section, and an administrator section. But it's a website designed 5 to 7 minute interactive. It's professional development, PD, but it's designed exclusively for education. Teachers, students, and school administrators. And this, we like to say, someone who goes to this site can go from 0 to ninja in OneNote in about an hour. Maybe a little longer if you're slower, maybe a little faster if you're not. But in general, you'll learn a bunch of stuff here, and it's all bite-sized chunks. So you can sit lunch, watch 14 minutes worth of interactive trainings, and save yourself 5 minutes every day for the rest of your teaching career, things like that. So this is a site that we're trying to really let more people know about and have a lot of, hopefully more people using it soon. And with that, I am happy to answer questions. And I'll share this deck. There's a ton more resources and links and other things. I'm on Twitter. OneNote's on Twitter. Happy to reach out on Twitter as well.
I don't need the microphone. I'm pretty loud. So I've got biology teachers who are now doing all their lab notebooks, middle school lab notebooks in OneNote. And they love the fact that they can do it in OneNote and don't have to carry a bunch of lab books home with them every night. But they've run into one little glitch when they try and mail, when the kids are mailing and sharing these pages. And I'm assuming now they don't have to do that. But I'm wondering, do I recommend that she goes to the new OneNote and work with that? We're already in Office 365.
The class notebook, you mean?
Yeah, the class notebook. Or do I tell her this might sometime get fixed?
Well, how about this? I see Michael Smith in the audience. Michael Smith, why don't you answer that question? Because you lived in both worlds.
Oh, hell yes. Yeah, we used to do the same thing, emailing back and forth.
Yeah.
We've been using the shared notebooks. It is so much easier. Even I have a teacher just last week who's not tech savvy, started up and running with the notebook and did a presentation for a group of visitors yesterday. So, yeah, go all the way.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I would have said too.
Just a little thing. I love the fact you can instantly grab audio, the instant grab video. Why not still pictures
Oh, insert pictures directly?
from the camera?
Well, here's an amazing thing. Now that we have 20 engineers in Canada, without promising any dates real soon, you might see a feature like that real soon. That was the Subliminal Man from the Saturday Night Live. Did you catch that? Yeah. So yes, that is great feedback, and we hope to address that very soon.
Really is ink on the Mac?
What's that? No, there's ink on iPads. Yeah, not on the Mac. But we are improving the Mac with other things very soon, too, that hopefully will make Mac people happy.
One thing that we would really like to see is, so you can, I like the individual notebook, notebooks per student, but it would be great to have collaborative notebooks for small groups of students in the same class. I know that you can do that in the collaborative space, but that's basically open to anybody. So having a smaller group of permissions that, like 4 students could share a collaborative space.
No, that's great feedback. We've heard feedback like that. And is there a way to partition within the collaboration space? Sort of. There is a workaround. It's not the best, but a lot of classes are using it. You can password protect a section. So what some classes do is they'll say, okay, group number 1 of 5 students, here you go in here and use this password. Maybe the teacher has it, maybe not. But they can collaborate then privately. It's not totally elegant, but that's a near-term workaround. But yeah, I think that's good feedback. As we move forward, we can, again, you can imagine you could have a plain Jane class notebook, or people who want, you can imagine I say, I want 3 collaboration spaces, 4 content libraries, and no private student. You could almost like build your own in the future where you can pick and choose.
So, Mike, I want to say it in a public space because we've said it before. But I continually am running into our humanities teachers not wanting to use OneNote for essay writing and things like that because it doesn't have some of the functionality as Word. And I know that it's not Word, but they're not using it to write essays because they want to be able to use some of the features of review and track changes. And so are you guys continually, does anyone else say that, or am I the only one?
I would say, and it's interesting because I wish Chris was here, Chris Prattley, because this goes back to 2004 where we have these same discussions. I would say this, OneNote was never designed to replace Word or PowerPoint or other things. And we're always very explicit about what we do want to do and don't, because it's a slippery slope of once you, because there's a lot of people like, well, can't you just add formulas from Excel into OneNote? And we could, but there's a little bit of, we have a finite number of things we can do with X number of people, and as soon as you start adding too many things, it becomes a Frankenstein, and it's like, it's never enough to the people who really want Word, and we would actually say, Word is meant to do essay writing. Now you could embed that essay or print it into OneNote, or you do your draft in OneNote, but when you're done, like move it into Word to do like the real final format thing. Because OneNote's never gonna have all the richness of pure Word. We might add little pieces here and there, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're not gonna be adding large numbers of like Excel-like or Word-like features is probably the right answer.
Okay, one more question, Sharon.
Well, just a quick thought on that. You know, lots of professional writers will draft in by typing, but then when they're doing really ripping things up and doing rewriting, and when students are taught to do serious rewriting, it's often with ink. And they're writing different levels of comments that are meta comments and inline comments and whatnot. So it could be interesting to consider longer term, trying to be able to port documents and mock them up with editing like you do on paper and pen now, when you're really doing the highly loaded, you know, intensive mental work of ripping up a major document.
I mean, it is good feedback. Like I said, I would say, I'm not never saying never, but I would say right now, we definitely have a set of things we know we have to do, and that one is probably definitely lower on the priority list. And if you notice, we're innovating more rapidly right now on non-Windows platforms. All of our, you know, Mac, iOS, Android, iPhone, they're all innovating. They're catching up. You could say the web app. So we're still adding things to Win32, but we're adding things at a much more rapid cadence on non-Win32.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.